She held my diary in her hands like it was proof of something terrible. Flipping through the pages while a room full of relatives watched me stand there, frozen, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear her voice. I knew what she was trying to do. She wanted to humiliate me, to prove I was dramatic, ungrateful, maybe even broken. And for a second, I thought she might succeed, because those pages held everything I had never said out loud. My fears, my anger, the nights I cried alone. But then she started reading. And the words she chose, the ones she thought would embarrass me, weren't what she expected. The room didn't react the way she planned. Faces shifted. Eyes moved from me to her. And suddenly, it wasn't my secrets being exposed anymore. It was something much bigger. Something she never thought anyone would hear. And in that moment, everything changed. I remember gripping the edge of the table so hard my fingers went numb, trying to stay upright while my mother stood there like she had just won something. The room was quiet, but not in the way she expected. It wasn't amused silence. It wasn't judgment directed at me. It was confusion, unease, and I could see it in the way my aunt slowly lowered her teacup, in the way my cousin stopped scrolling on her phone. My mother cleared her throat and kept reading, louder this time. Like she thought the problem was that people hadn't heard her clearly enough. She read a line about me feeling invisible in my own home, about how I learned to stay quiet because speaking up always made things worse. She let out a small laugh, like it was ridiculous, like I had made it all up. But no one laughed with her. That was the first crack. The first moment something shifted. But that wasn't even the worst part. She flipped to another page, faster now. Like she was searching for something more embarrassing, something that would get the reaction she wanted. Instead, she read about the night I sat on the bathroom floor holding my breath so no one would hear me cry after she told me I was the reason she was always stressed. I hadn't meant for anyone to ever read that. It wasn't written for an audience. It was written because I didn't have anywhere else to put those feelings. My chest tightened as the words filled the room. But this time, I wasn't just feeling fear. I was watching the way my uncle's expression changed, the way my grandmother shifted uncomfortably in her seat. My mother hesitated for a second, just a second, but it was enough for me to see heightened certainty. She tried to recover, forcing a smile, saying something about how teenagers exaggerate everything. But her voice didn't sound as confident anymore. And then she made the mistake that changed everything. She turned to a page she hadn't read before. I could tell by the way her eyes moved slower, actually taking in the words this time instead of skimming for something useful. And as she started reading, her voice faltered. It was a small detail, something she probably thought wouldn't matter. A memory I had written about the night she forgot to pick me up from school. How I waited outside until it was dark, too scared to call because I knew she would be angry. But I hadn't just written about being forgotten. I had written about what happened when I finally got home. The way she didn't apologize. The way she turned it into my fault for not reminding her enough. The room felt heavier now, thicker, like the air itself didn't know where to go. She stopped reading mid-sentence, her lips pressing together. But it was too late. Everyone had heard enough. I felt something strange in that moment. Not relief, not exactly, but a shift. Like the weight I had been carrying alone for years had suddenly been placed in the center of the room where everyone could see it. And for the first time, it wasn't just my word against hers. My cousin spoke first, quietly, but clearly, asking why I would write something like that if it wasn't true. My mother snapped back immediately, defensive, saying I had always been overly sensitive, always twisting things. But her voice had lost that edge of control. It sounded rushed now, uneven, and the more she talked, the worse it got. Because she wasn't just denying what I had written, she was revealing herself. The way she dismissed my feelings so quickly. The way she laughed things off that clearly weren't funny at all lined up with what they had just heard. And I realized something I hadn't expected. I didn't need to defend myself. The words had already done that. The truth had already spoken. But that wasn't even the moment that changed everything. It happened when my grandmother, who rarely said anything during these kinds of situations, looked directly at my mother and asked a simple question. Why didn't you talk to her instead of reading this in front of everyone? The silence that followed was different this time. It wasn't confusion. It was clarity. My mother didn't have an answer, not a real one. She tried to brush it off, saying she was just concerned that she wanted people to see what she was dealing with. But it didn't land the way she thought it would, because suddenly it didn't look like concern. It looked like exposure. It's just not mine. Hers, I felt my hands relax for the first time since this started. My breathing slowed. And I did something I had never done before in a moment like this. I spoke, not loudly, not angrily, just clearly. I said that those pages weren't written to embarrass anyone. They were written because I didn't feel safe saying those things out loud. And if hearing them now made people uncomfortable, maybe that discomfort mattered. Maybe it meant something needed to change. My voice shook at first, but I didn't stop. I told them I wasn't perfect, that I had my own faults, my own moments of anger and silence, but none of that erased what I had experienced. None of that made those feelings less real. And for once, no one interrupted me. No one told me to calm down or stop being dramatic. They just listened. My mother tried to step in to regain control of the situation, but it was too late. Dynamic had shifted. The room wasn't hers anymore. It belonged to the truth now. And the truth wasn't neat or comfortable. It was messy, complicated, real. I could see it in their faces. Not judgment toward me, but something closer to understanding. Maybe even regret. And in that moment, I realized something that took me years to understand. Being heard doesn't always come from shouting louder. Sometimes it comes from the truth being impossible to ignore. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Conversations changed. The focus moved away from me, from the diary, from the spectacle my mother had tried to create. People spoke in lower voices, more careful, more aware. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small in that room. I felt seen. Not perfectly understood, not completely validated, but seen enough to know I wasn't invisible anymore. Later that night, my mother tried to talk to me. Alone this time. Her voice was softer, but I could still hear the frustration underneath it. She said I had made her look bad. That I should have stopped her earlier if I didn't want things to go that far. And that was the moment I understood something clearly. She still didn't get it. Not really. But that didn't mean nothing had changed. Because I had. I didn't argue. I didn't apologize. I just told her that reading my diary had been her choice, not mine. And whatever came from that was something she would have to sit with. I walked away after that, not dramatically, not angrily, just done. And for the first time, it didn't feel like running away. It felt like stepping out of something that had held me back for far too long. The truth didn't fix everything overnight. It didn't suddenly make our relationship perfect. But it did something just as important. It made it real. And once something is real, you can't pretend it isn't anymore. If you've ever felt like your voice didn't matter, like your feelings were dismissed or turned against you, I want you to know you're not alone in that experience. So many people grow up learning to stay quiet just to keep the peace, even when that silence comes at a cost. This story resonated with you in any way? Take a moment to share your thoughts or your own story in the comments. You never know who might read it and feel less alone because of what you said. And if you believe in more stories like this, real, honest, and meaningful, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach more people who need to hear them. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is speak your truth even when it feels uncomfortable. And sometimes that truth can change more than just your own life.